Good evening, good morning, whatever time frame you're joining us, we're happy to have you here. This is the UC San Diego Parent and Family webinar, and thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Dr. Ebony Williams. I'm the Director of Virtual Experience and Peer Engagement Initiatives, and I will be your moderator tonight. Our host tonight is Vice Chancellor Allison Saterlin of Student Affairs. If you're interested in hearing this webinar in Spanish, please see the chat for further instructions. We have disabled chat and we'll be using the Q&A function in the Zoom for you to ask questions. We have a large group of talented individuals ready to answer your questions. And I believe our plans for the evening may answer the questions you pre-submitted. We look forward to answering as many questions as we can during this time. Our agenda today is to provide you with a welcome from our Vice Chancellor, as well as an update around academics. A lot of you asked about courses and classes. We're also going to give you some updates on student and well-being of your loved ones and housing. All huge questions in our pre-submitted space. We'll also be providing an international update and parent and family resources for you to continue to engage and be a part of our community. We'll end our time with answering questions that you pre-submitted that may not get covered in the above agenda. So with that, I'd like to remind you to ask your questions and answers in the Q&A function of Zoom. We're so excited to have you here, and thanks for being a part of our community. With that, I'd like to introduce our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Allison Saterlin, to provide a welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. Greetings to all of you, and thank you for giving us some of your time. For those of you that I have not had the opportunity to meet either in person or remotely, I'm Allison Saterlin, and I have the honor of serving as your student's Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. And it's my job to guide UC San Diego towards its goal of being a student-centered community alongside my colleagues. UC San Diego is a special place for many reasons, but it is your children and loved ones, our students, that inspire many of us to come to work each day and do our best. During the course of the pandemic, our students have amazed me with their care for one another, their resiliency, and their determination. I know that this has been incredibly difficult, a challenging year, and not one that any of us expected. Some of you know that my oldest son is a UC sophomore. As his mom, I can say with certainty that I understand how challenging this year has been and how proud I am of him and how proud I am of your children. We know that they could not and cannot do this without your care and love. So on behalf of all of us at UC San Diego, first let me say thank you for all of the support you have provided and continue to provide for your students' success and well-being. Keeping their safety in mind, we would like to ask your help and ask you to encourage your students to stay with us for spring break. We have curated more than 80 activities for students in a series of tracks or leadership, academic enrichment, service, health and well-being, disability awareness, adventure, art, and research. These experiences are remote, hybrid, and in person, on campus, of course, masked and outdoors in small groups. Please know that our students' parents and families are our most important partner on their UC San Diego journey. And we want to thank you and make sure that you are well informed. If we aren't able to answer all of your questions during this webinar, which will be recorded and shared out, please feel free to email vcsa@ucsd.edu, and I will follow up with you personally. Finally, I would like to thank my dear colleagues for giving us their time and expertise for this webinar. Again, thank you for being here, and let's get started.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Saterlin. I'm hoping that you can hear us better. I saw the question about us not being heard. I'll try to project and we'll work on that in the background. In the meantime, we're going to continue down our agenda. Next up is AVC Carlos Jensen over educational innovation to give you some updates around the academic environment here at UC San Diego. Carlos?
Hi, Dr. Williams. Thank you for inviting me and this opportunity to share an update with everyone about what spring, summer, and fall is going to look like in terms of classes. I know that there are a lot of questions about that. So can we go to the next slide, please? So for this spring term, in a few moments, we will share an update about the situation here in San Diego, the evolution of the pandemic and contagion here. But as we get to the end of this term and start looking at the spring term, we are in a much better situation than we have been this whole winter term. And so we expect spring and summer to be in our red tier category, which will allow us to start offering classes indoors again. This past term, we've only been able to do outdoor classes. We will be at the same kind of conditions that we were in the fall, we believe, which means that classes will be at 25% capacity, 6-foot distancing, with all the masking and safety protocols in place. We expect to see up to 10% of our class sections be offered in person or hybrid. Most of the instruction for spring will still be remote. We will continue to use the outdoor classrooms, and as the weather warms up, that will be probably a quite pleasant experience. And the classes that we do in person will predominantly focus on hands-on and experiential types of experiences. As we look towards the summer, we are again, as we did last summer, expecting to have quite a number of online offerings for students for coursework over the summer, and that will be mostly remote with the possibility of some in-person instruction, especially focused on lab courses, but the vast majority being remote. What we will bring back to campus, especially over the summer, are opportunities for undergraduates to engage in research and work with faculty and research groups here. And so your professors will be communicating about those kinds of opportunities. And so that will be coming back to campus. Next. As we look towards the fall, and keep in mind this is 6 months away, and so it's always difficult to predict what things are going to look like 6 months away. We are expecting, together with most of the other UCs, to be predominantly in person. That means that we expect probably 80% or more of our classes to be in person in the fall. That's made possible by the improving situation as well as very rapid rollout of vaccinations here in San Diego. Now, when we say that 80% of classes will be in person, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the way that they were before the pandemic. And so we will be using technology smarter, we will be shifting things around, but the kind of social interactions, opportunities to work with other students, opportunities to work with faculty and TAs, that will return. We will continue to use the outdoor classrooms. They will become a staple of UC San Diego, at least for the coming year. And we predict that masking and sanitation, those kinds of requirements, will continue to be in place even after everyone is vaccinated for everyone's safety. We expect fall to be a transition term, and so we are looking to accommodate students who have trouble making it back to campus, but over time, after fall, we will expect to transition more and more to in-person only, except in cases where the program chooses to engage in remote participation or remote teaching. The fall will also see a gradual resumption of on-campus activities, student clubs, student events, etc. And we will have an opportunity to go back to that celebration of learning, that building of community that we all miss so much. And I'll end my comments here by just reminding you that if and when you have an opportunity to get vaccinated, and UCSD is working very hard to roll out the vaccines, please take that opportunity.
Thank you so much, AVC Jensen. I know a lot of you had questions about what schooling and returning to learn would look like and how we're doing. So happy to have that information provided to you. Next up, we have Dr. Stacy St. Michel, who's the Director of Medical Services, and will give an update on student well-being on our campus. I know you're curious.
Hello, so I'm here to talk about how UCSD has been keeping students safe during this COVID-19 pandemic. There was a big surge of cases in January and in December, and we're seeing a nice downward trend in the state as well as in the county in the number of cases. Next slide. So that currently in our county, we have a case rate of 4%, which is wonderful. Next slide. So UCSD has been doing a great job in terms of keeping our campus safe. Part of this is COVID-19 testing. Testing is mandatory for students that are living, learning, working, or participating in sports on campus. We have provider administered testing at the Price Center. This is by appointment, or the students can access testing through the self-administered testing sites in the vending machines. They can get their testing kits using their student ID. The kits include instructions, a swab, and a testing vial. And then the test is linked through their student ID through a barcode using their UC San Diego app and their AD login. There is no cost to the students for this testing. There are 14 locations throughout the campus, and with pickups all throughout the day, last pickup at 2 p.m. And the test results usually come back within 24 to 48 hours. Students and employees are doing one test per week, unless there are other symptoms or if they've been exposed or if there's a wastewater signal. Next slide. So the students and the staff at UCSD who are working on campus have been doing a phenomenal job in getting testing done. There have been up to date, as of today, more than 200,000 COVID-19 tests that have been done by students and staff. And we've had a positivity rate currently of 0.1%, which is much lower than the positive rate in the county or in the state. So our students have been doing a wonderful job. Again, our turnaround time for testing is 16.9 hours. So very quickly, this allows us to identify cases very quickly and get them into isolation and to quarantine promptly to minimize any spread of infection on campus. Next slide. One of the other things that our campus is doing is wastewater monitoring. We are monitoring the wastewater coming from different buildings on our campus. And this is important because COVID-19 can be detected earlier in the wastewater than before people actually develop symptoms. So here is the map that we have. In red are the buildings that have someone who tested positive. And in black is a building that has no positivity rate. And if a building, you can kind of scan on this chart, if a building turns positive, then a message goes out to the campus to encourage people to get tested so we can identify the positive case. Next slide. We have opened up the vaccination center at Rimac. This has been set up to vaccinate up to 5,000 people per day, but this is dependent on the vaccine availability. The site is open 7 days a week, and the students actually have been starting to have access to the vaccine. Student access to vaccine is determined by state and county eligibility. Currently, we have vaccinated student employees in the central tiers, as well as, and we're going to be vaccinating students who have met the medical criteria starting March 15th with the highest risk groups. Staffing and volunteering, there are potential volunteer applications, volunteer opportunities for our students to work at the vaccine site. They can work as runners or observers, and there's an application process. Currently, there's been so many volunteers that we don't need any more volunteers at this time. Some of the volunteers can be vaccinated if there's enough supply. So this has been something that we're going to be continuing through now and throughout the spring, and hopefully more and more students will get vaccinated as we get more vaccine supply. Next slide. That's it.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
You're welcome.
This is great. Or I should say, Dr. San Miguel. I think you answered a lot of the questions. The chat, the Q&A went crazy while you were going. We'll answer some of those questions during the Q&A session later on. A lot of questions about when will my student be eligible? How will they be eligible? And so we'll share as much as we can. And she answered some of that question live around we're following the rules and guidelines of our county. So thank you for that. Next up is our Director of Housing Services, Janice Severson. And I know a lot of questions came in for her in the pre-space around where's my child going to live? What does that look like? Jana?
Thanks, Ebony. I appreciate the opportunity to share some updates with you tonight regarding housing. Next slide, please. So spring break 2021 is just 2 weeks away. And as Vice Chancellor Saterlin shared earlier, we do have some exciting programs scheduled for students during this time. Since we are encouraging students to stay on campus for spring break, and having that being the case, we've been granted an exception to safely host a week-long spring break enrichment program in San Diego. The program will consist of both remote and Three's Company compliant in-person activities in specialized areas of interest. Soon, a final outline of available programming will be shared in areas including academics, service, adventure, art, research, and health and well-being, among others. In fact, yesterday, all students living on campus received messaging about what is currently available to sign up for. And we encourage students to check that regularly as new programs are being created and approved on almost a daily basis. So during spring break, Housing, Dining, Hospitality Dining is going to be featuring spring break destination themed menu items like Baja fish tacos, banh mi, ceviche, yakitori plates. We are going to be doing our best to help students that are staying on campus have a feeling that perhaps they traveled somewhere else for spring break this year. We will have several dining and market locations open. For our restaurants, we'll have 64 Degrees at Ravel, Cafe Ventanas at ERC, Canyon Vista Marketplace at Warren, as well as Rogers and 7th Markets will also be open. And there will also be, at the University Center, there'll be different restaurants and venues open, as well as Target will be available for our students that are staying on campus. Next slide. All right, so spring quarter 2021, following right after spring break. So as we have done throughout the pandemic, I just want to restate that all of our decisions about having students live on campus have been led by consideration of the health and safety of our students, of our employees, and our local communities. So we will be offering rooms to additional students on spring quarter. Our wait list opened on February 24th, and offers have been made and contracts are going out. Now, due to limited availability, a priority will be provided to students with housing insecurity, students taking classes on campus, student scholars who participate in programs that mandate living on campus, and then a lottery will be used for the remainder of the applicants, with priority provided to first and second year students, including transfer students. So any students that are assigned from the wait list will be in single occupancy rooms in fully vacant apartments. And that 472 is the number of beds that we will have available for spring quarter. We do still have space available. So if your student currently lives on campus, they will not be getting a new apartment mate or a new suite mate. Any new students that move on campus, again, will be assigned single occupancy rooms in currently vacant apartments. Thanks, Ebony.
It's been a pleasure to have you join us and share that information. And I feel like you answered a lot of the questions that come from our parents and family beforehand. Next up is Grace Fuller, representing our ISPO office, International Service Program Office, and she's the manager of International Student Experience and Engagement. Grace, can you show up for us?
Hello from the International Students and Programs Office. Next slide, please. Here are the latest updates regarding visa and immigration policies impacting international students. Students applying for visas at U.S. embassies and consulates outside of the U.S. continue to experience delays in scheduling appointments or getting their visas processed in a timely manner. Students should continue to check the website of their nearest embassy or consulate for the most updated service information. The presidential proclamations restricting travel to the US based on COVID-related or employment-related issues are still in effect until further notice. Students who are unable to arrive by March 29th, the first day of spring quarter, should contact their college or department advisor regarding enrollment and course registration. In addition, students should contact ISPO so their forms I-20s and DS 2019s can be updated accordingly. Guidance from federal agencies regarding in-person coursework for spring 2021 is still pending. At this time, ISPO is advising F1 students who plan to enter the US in spring that they must have at least one course with an in-person component. Here are the reminders for students who are able to travel to the US for the spring term. F1 students who are requesting entry to the US must have the following: a valid passport, a valid F1 visa stamp in their passport, a valid I-20 with travel signature, as well as understand and know health requirements. Currently, all air passengers are required to present a negative COVID-19 test taken within 3 days of departure. Additionally, we recommend that you visit itravel.ucsd.edu for up-to-date travel resources. Additionally, ISPO continues to engage our students virtually in the spring term. We welcome you to check out all of our programs and events at ievents.ucsd.edu. Finally, ISPO's website has a lot of information for your frequently asked questions. Please take note or a screenshot of some of the links to the resources here.
Thank you so much, Grace. Such great information for our parents and families who may be coming from international locations. That's such a great richness to our campus as a whole. Next up is Jody Wisely, the Executive Director of Parent and Family Programs. Jody?
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon to hear about spring, summer, and fall here at UC San Diego. I'm excited to announce that Parent and Family Programs has joined the unit that contains alumni engagement, annual giving, and career services here on campus. And what this means is that we'll have even more opportunities for parents and families to engage with UC San Diego and really be involved in the university experience alongside your students. I'd like to take a moment just to introduce the parent and family team who is here to support you throughout your journey. Myself as executive director, as well as Dale Gray, who is our director of development, and Dan Perez, who is our parent and family program coordinator. The three of us work together to ensure that there are many opportunities for parents and families to engage with the university. Two of the major programs that we have available are the Parents Council, which helps determine how the Parents Fund is going to be distributed across different students' success and support initiatives here at the university. And the council also helps drive parent and family programming. If you're interested in finding out more information about the Parents Council, you can reach out to Dale Gray directly, and he'll be happy to share that information with you. And we also have our Parent and Family Ambassador Program. This is an opportunity for you to volunteer at some of our events and engage with other parents and families, share your experience, and just share what's great about UC San Diego. We have several upcoming events through our Triton Family web series that will be taking place throughout the spring quarter. One of the items that I'd like to highlight is that we will be doing a webinar centered around commencement, and that is scheduled for May 12th. We are still waiting on some guidance from the county and the state regarding what commencement might look like, and we hope to have answers about that in the coming weeks. So if you join us on May 12th, we will have much more information to share with you about exactly what commencement might look like. You can find these upcoming events as well as many other resources at our website, which is parents.ucsd.edu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jody. As you can tell, we're definitely engaged and interested in having you be a part of our community, just like we're honored to have you here tonight. With that, that concludes the speaking portion or presentation portion of our webinar. The next piece is answering your questions. So feel free to submit them in the chat. I have a significant amount that you submitted when you registered for this webinar, and we will get started shortly. First, I'd like to share who will be on screen with us. So it'll be all of the presenters that you just heard. So if you had a question in particular about something you heard, we know the vaccine is a huge one. We'll also be joined by our AVCs, Patty Mahaffey and Maruth Figueroa of Student Retention and Success and Student Life. I said that backwards, but we'll figure that out. John Moore, our Dean of Undergraduate Education, are all the people who will join us on screen right now. We have some secret panelists as well who are listed here, which is our ABC, Cheryl Harrelson. So if you have a question for her, you can put in a Q&A as well. Please turn on your cameras if you're joining me for Q&A. Oops. And I'm going to stop sharing because we're going to have fun talking to each other. All righty. Well, the first question I have is COVID related. It's around the vaccine. There's a lot of questions about, will my student be eligible if they're not on campus? Can they get it? Can you provide some more understanding around that,
Yes.
Dr. San Miguel?
Our plan is to vaccinate all the UCSD students, whether they live off campus or on campus. It all depends on their eligibility, which is determined by national and state guidelines. So we are following the national, state, and local guidelines in terms of who is eligible for the vaccine. And then we send out the invitations to those individuals that are eligible for the vaccine at that time. But as soon as, and it's also dependent on our vaccine supply. So when we get vaccine, we will send out those invitations and get students vaccinated as quickly as possible.
So Stacy, stay with me for a minute. Will there be a fee associated with vaccinating our students?
At this time, there's no charge to students or staff for the COVID vaccine. So we don't anticipate that there will be any fee associated with this at this time.
And then a big one that they're asking, and I'll give you a break and come back to you, is it going to be mandatory for all students to get vaccinated?
Oh, that's a good question. And I think that's a question that is still being discussed at much higher levels than myself. I think this discussion will be decided probably amongst all the campuses so that the campuses have the same requirements across the board. At this time, it's not required, it's not mandatory, but stay tuned.
Thank you so much. Vaccination, you can imagine, is hot on everyone's mind as
Yeah.
some people miss being in person. So we appreciate all the work you and your unit are doing. I'll give you a pause, but I'm coming back to you. I have some questions about fall. But talking about fall, Jana, you know, housing has been a hot topic. They want to know if I chose to go home after fall break, how do I apply my stipend? If I'm a sophomore or a freshman this year and I'm going to be a second year next year, do I get some priorities? Do I get to stay in the room I'm in now if I've been on campus? So let's start with wherever you'd like, and I'll reframe anything that you miss. I know you have some answers prepared.
Super. Yeah, thanks, Ebony. There were a lot of variations on that theme submitted online in advance through the registration. So there's a lot of nuances to this based on your students' particular circumstances. But let me start with this. You know, assuming that campus returns to double occupancy, and that's what we hope to do in the fall, our intent is to offer on-campus housing via priority system to all new incoming first year and incoming transfer students, and then based on space availability for continuing second year students, including continuing transfer students. We expect that most interested second year students can be accommodated. So because it's a little bit far away in COVID time, these things are still being discussed and developed. So I'm going to ask that you always check the HDH FAQ page and check it regularly for the most current details. And I'm sure, as you've heard too many times during the pandemic, things can change based on public health guidelines.
Yes, I really appreciate you providing those answers because I think a lot of our questions require a crystal ball, which we don't have right now, but we're so empathetic to people wanting to plan and know where things were going to be in the future. And we'd love to give more concrete answers. But as you've seen, the pandemic and the situation of our health and environment can change and pivot all of our plans very quickly as we celebrate a year of being in this environment and trying to keep each other safe. Dean Moore, I'm coming to you. There's a great question around if my student didn't take in-person classes as a junior and they'll be a senior next year, what are going to be some of the opportunities for them to be in person and have those hands-on experiences? And I know ABC Jensen may want to join in, but I definitely wanted to start with our Dean of Undergraduate Education.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that question. So as you know, in the spring quarter, we are hoping to have about some level of in-person instruction, and we have those will be primarily outside, although if we go to the red tier, it's possible we will be able to move inside. So it will be the courses that are currently scheduled to be in person will be available in the spring quarter. By the fall quarter, we're hoping to have mostly in-person courses, and so at that point, we're hoping that pretty much all of the courses that someone might need will be offered in person. And I'll let Carlos, ABC Jensen, add to that if there's anything else to.
Sure. The only thing that I would add to that is the different programs, different departments are looking very hard at ways to help students kind of catch up on the opportunities or the experiences that they missed during this remote time. And so I know that there are programs that are looking at kind of boot camps at the end of summer or in between the semester or the quarter breaks next year. So everyone's looking at opportunities here to help these students catch up and have the kind of rich and meaningful experiences that we all associate with the UCSD education.
Thank you both. I know how hard both of you are working to ensure our faculty are looking at it strategically, our departments are looking at it, and even our academic deans in the colleges and the departments are trying to make sure the students get the experience they need and they get the education they need to confer the degrees for their future. So I really appreciate that. Our AVCs, I have 2 questions, and I think you can tag team them. The first one is, can you provide some insight on spring break? I saw some questions in the chat about, is it free? Can they sign up now? Share some information and insight. And then Patty, I'm going to have you answer the question you just typed because I think it should be answered live. There you go.
I can start us off. With regards to spring break, there are a variety of opportunities, as VC Saterlin had shared earlier. These activities are open and available for students. There are no fees. Some of them do require a registration, so they do need to go in and sign up. On the website that was shared, and we can certainly pop it in the chat so that everybody has access to it, you'll find the listings. Right now, we are continuing to add to that list, so please encourage your students to come back and check it out. And we have a variety of activities, anything from academic enrichment, careers, focusing on career and professionalism, to also just getting outdoors in a safe way, to also ensuring that we're taking care of ourselves. So please continue to visit. As I mentioned, some of them do require sign up, so make sure that they're clicking on the description and registering for that, for those opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. And good evening, everybody, or good morning. And there was a question in the chat or in the Q&A function just asking about off-campus housing for next year for any students that are looking for it. We have a really robust off-campus housing website. It's just simply offcampushousing.ucsd.edu. And that site can help students identify locations off campus. We also have an off-campus housing coordinator that can also help support students finding housing off campus. The second part to the question that was in the Q&A had to do with what ways can students that maybe spent their first year away from campus get connected in the fall when they come back to campus. And we, as a campus, we run a program called Triton Weeks of Welcome. It runs several weeks in the beginning of the fall quarter, and right before the fall quarter. It includes all the orientation programs, all the Welcome Week programs, and we are actively planning for that right now, and looking at the programs that we can do with modified density and physical distancing and masking. But working hard to provide opportunities for students to get connected, and specifically also looking at programs for our students that had to spend this first year away from campus. We're keenly aware of that impact.
Thank you so much, AVC Mahaffey. Vice Chancellor Saterlin, I'm coming to you about campus facilities being open in spring quarter. So gyms, libraries, all the fun stuff people like to do in person.
Sure, this is a question we get often from our students and our staff colleagues as well. So our current guidance is dictated by the data and positivity in the county, and we have a team that monitors this information each day. We know, of course, that currently the county of San Diego is not yet in the red tier. We're still in the purple tier. The red tier may allow for some flexibility in terms of access indoors, but it would be dependent on approval from the county and the state of California as well. We've had some initial conversations about how we might make some parts of the library accessible. particularly for spring quarter, depending on what our data looks like post spring break as our students who live in campus operated housing return. Of course, it would need to be physically distant spaces. We need to make sure that there was added maintenance and cleaning of the space, and that all users of the space were compliant with masking protocols, et cetera. We are certainly eager to make available other facility and spaces on campus available as well, but it's really dependent on county and state approval.
Thank you so much. It's so dependent on county approval. If they let us run, I think we would run as much as we could, but we also want to make sure everyone's safe and our community is moving as a unit. So we even have to restrain ourselves. So thank you for that question. I also want to share that we also have our recreation team has created outdoor gyms for students to play with. And so there's some opportunities, and we've also used our outdoor educational tents to allow for outdoor classes to be study spaces for students. So not replacing what has been there, but just reiterating. John, I'm coming to you, Dean of Undergraduate Education. Is the deadline to drop classes extended this year? And I'm sure our parents and loved ones may mean that on a quarterly basis. So any insight you can share with them around that would be helpful.
Right. So no, the deadline for dropping classes has not changed this year. So the deadline for dropping is the 9th week. That would be dropping with a W, and then the 4th week to drop without a W. What has changed for winter and spring quarter 2021 only is the deadline for changing your grading option from pass to pass, no pass. That normally is in the end of the 4th week, but that's changed to the end of the 10th week for those quarters, but those quarters only. And then going to the fall, it should revert to the 4th week.
Thank you so much. Dr. San Miguel, I promised you I was coming back. One of the questions that I have in coming back is, if my students have been off campus and they want to come on campus to live, what is the process in which for them to get vaccinated or testing? I think and then I have a second question. I won't load you the way I did before.
Okay, so basically if they're returning to campus, we ask everyone to test within 24 hours of their return on campus, so day 1, and then also test on day 5 and day 10 after arrival on campus. And during that time, we're asking them to sequester. So basically that means that they will be wearing their mask in all public spaces or in common areas, as well as practicing social distancing and good hand hygiene. And so that's our current policy for right now. So there's no quarantine.
And then there was a question about someone wanting to transfer to UCSD Health if they didn't already have it, but they'd like to get under our system. So they'd like to have their healthcare be provided to their loved one, their student, through us, but they maybe opted out originally.
Yes, and so if they're a current student, they don't have any health insurance, they can contact our student health insurance department. The email is ship3@ucsd.edu, and they can work with one of our insurance coordinators to get enrolled into SHIP. And for the spring quarter, if they're on SHIP, it actually covers not only the spring quarter, but it covers through the summer. So it's actually a really good deal until the fall quarter begins.
Thank you so much. Jenna, I have another one for you.
Yep.
If my student is taking classes in the summer, can they stay on campus in the summer?
Absolutely. We're happy to have students stay on campus with us this summer. Our application for summer housing will go live on April 12th, which is the same date that students can start to register for summer classes. This summer, we will continue to have single occupancy, so 1 student per room, and that will equate to a double rate, even though you're in a single room. And typically, I think this was also submitted in advance, We consolidate students that are living with us in the summertime to one location on campus rather than across all 7 communities. So there was a question about if their student would stay in the same place. So we would consolidate back to one location. I believe this summer it will be at 6 College in the new North Torrey Pines Living Learning neighborhood. And then if your student is staying and continuing on until the fall of 21, then they would then move into their new assignment after that.
Great, thank you. You answered my second question, which was exactly that. So I appreciate that connection. We were wanting to know if their child got to stay in their room. I know you get very comfortable with that, but part of the growth space in college is learning how to navigate these new spaces is to allow for you to be flexible when you graduate, because that's going to be what's required in being successful. We have answered most, if not all, of your questions. And so I'm assuming that you feel confident and answered and aware so you can make the proper decisions for your loved ones on our campus. One of the big questions that has been asked of us on a constant basis is some of you may have graduating seniors. So it's a question about commencement. And I have a request to see if someone who is currently in our secret panel wants to turn on their camera. If not, one of our AVCs or vice chancellors may answer. But the question about graduation, Susie, are you willing to come on camera for us? I know you've been answering them privately. There she is.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my headphones are not working for me.
That's okay. We hear you loud and clear. And
Okay,
for
good.
everyone here, this is Associate Vice Chancellor Susie Sterner, and she's going to give you as much as she can, which may not be all you want, on our graduation ceremony plans for this year.
Yes, thank you, Ebony, and thank you everyone for joining us. We know how much everyone is looking for this information, and we desperately want to get all the details out. As you probably well know, this is a very evolving situation with this pandemic, and certainly in the state of California with county, et cetera, guidelines. So we are what I've learned today is that we are expecting some guidelines that will be coming from the state of California that will help us to be able to plan for commencement. And if any of that can be in person for this June, we anticipate getting those guidelines being able to help us make those final decisions. So certainly by the end of March, we will have all of the details I think that everyone is looking for. Irregardless, we will be providing a virtual commencement ceremony, whatever those guidelines may be, or whatever we may be allowed to do, if anything in person. There will be a virtual experience for all family and friends and graduates. The question will be is what and if we can offer anything in person. So know that there is a very large team that is working on this daily as we speak. And we anticipate, like I said, being able to answer all those questions and have a fully detailed plan out to all of our graduates and their families before the end of the month. Is that helpful, Ebony?
That is extremely helpful, and you relieve a lot of pressure off me because we got a lot of those questions and people want to know how they're going to celebrate. And I know we had to practice last year, and our graduating seniors had felt loved and appreciated. I just remind everyone this generation is preparing for the future, and I'm hoping the skills that they've learned over this last year are going to be equipping them for the future we've never seen and won't look like what we've gone through. So I really encourage us to use positive affirmation words, even though their experience will be maybe very different than what we've seen over the past 100 years, right, of school. So I really appreciate that. Susie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I am gonna get ready to close this out, but I'm gonna ask Dean Moore to come on and answer the question about priority registration for students. I've seen it asked in multiple ways. When will my first year get to go? Who gets to go first? Can you provide some clarity to our parents and loved ones before we close out tonight?
I can't give you the details. There are a number of complications around this. I think the best thing to do whenever you have a question about this is to contact your advisor, either at your college or at your department. And the best way to do that is through the Virtual Advising Center. So sending a question to VAC, that's VAC, Virtual Advising Center.ucsd.edu, is the best way to get the most up-to-date information. And they can look at your schedule, and they can advise you on strategies for getting into the classes that you need to make timely progress towards your degree.
Thank you so much, John, for representing our 7 college system and growing. We have tons of deans of academic advising and student affairs who work diligently to be able to answer and work collectively to answer those questions with several of our units. So please rely on that resource, have your student rely on that resource. It's an exceptional resource to be dependent on. I really thank you all for your time and talent. I thank you for the questions that you've asked. I thank you for being a part of our community, whether your student chose on their own or you're just supporting their choice to be with us. We're happy to have you be a part of our space. And we're happy to work together to keep your loved ones safer, keep ourselves safer, and I don't know, build a new future. So with that, I'm gonna share my screen one last time just to officially say thank you to all of our panelists, as they've been amazing. We'll be missing one name out of here. So Susie Cerner, thanks for popping on screen. ABC Harrelson, thanks for being in the secret panel, and all the other individuals who are here answering our questions and making this possible. It's been my pleasure to be with you tonight. I hope our Spanish-speaking parents have gotten what you needed as well. We appreciate all of you as a part of our community. Have a great evening. Thank you.